It's an issue we've talked about on this show many times over the years, CTE, which stands for chronic traumatic encephalopathy. It's a term used for the brain disease that's caused by repeated hits to the head. And now the effort to raise awareness is getting a lot more star power.
By the time I'm a senior in high school, I'll have played 13 years of tackle football. I could already have CTE, and it will continue to destroy my brain even after I stop playing. So by the time I'm your age,
I could be fighting depression, struggling to keep my thoughts straight. I could become violent, even towards my own children.
That, of course, is Pro Football Hall of Fame quarterback Brett Favre in a video from the Concussion Legacy Foundation, co-founded by former Harvard football player and then pro wrestler Chris Nowinski. CTE first gained major attention in 2011 when a group of players filed what would become the first class action lawsuit against the league. They claimed the NFL tried to conceal for decades any links between football and brain injuries. Just a year later, one of the lead plaintiffs, former Atlanta Falcons safety Ray Easterling, died by suicide. An autopsy showed he suffered from CTE. The following month, former Patriot Junior Seau took his own life, and after he was also diagnosed with CTE, his family joined the lawsuit. Over the years, the suit grew to include more than 5,000 plaintiffs, ending with a $1 billion settlement in 2015. But it was just 2 months ago, after another lawsuit, that the NFL said it would finally stop taking race into account when determining whether a player suffered enough brain damage to qualify for a payout. So as the league makes this an uphill battle every step of the way, the Concussion Legacy Foundation is hoping more high-profile backers like Favre will get parents and school boards and legislators to think twice about high-contact sports at a young age. Joined now by its co-founder and CEO, Chris Nowinski. Chris, it's good to see you.
Good to see you, Jim.
By the way, I called you a star pro wrestler last night, so you owe me big time. Let me tell
Thank you.
How'd the marriage with Favre come about?
It was one of his former teammates introduced us. You know, Brett Favre's been very vocal on this issue for a long time, and we thought he'd just be perfect for this PSA.
He is. Could you explain the science for those who haven't been following, vis-a-vis young kids and contact sports like football?
So we published 2 years ago that after looking at hundreds of football players' brains, the ones who got CT tended to have longer careers. Essentially, each year you played tackle football, your odds of developing CT went up 30%, meaning they double every 3 years. Now we're also letting them know we've diagnosed CT in 16 former high school players. Wow. This isn't a pro or college issue. And 15 of those 16 started before 12, meaning that they had longer careers, and that's probably why they got it. And so one of the key takeaways for this for parents is to say, you know, you think about CT being your son's coach's issue, like they got to stop hitting practice, teach them the right way. But actually, a parent might have a bigger role in deciding whether or not their child gets CT by when they sign them up and how many years they play. Sort
of like cigarette smoking. I mean, is that a fair parallel, would you say, the longer you smoke?
It's actually an exact parallel. Both of them increase, you know, your odds of developing lung cancer go up about 30% per year you smoke.
You know, while we're talking about concussions, my recollection when I talked to you and Dr. Stern, who had done some of this research a couple of years ago, subconcussive hits when you're young can have the same consequence, even if they don't rise to the concussive level. Am I right about that?
You're right. Think of every hit like a cigarette. 1,000 hits a year is a problem.
So, Chris, you've been on this crusade, you and your colleagues, for years. What's the status? I know there are bills that have been filed. What's the status of this in school systems around the country?
Well, youth tackle football enrollment is down about 30% since we started this work. But the last couple of years, the data says it's sort of stalled out. And so we need to really light the fire because the data is becoming clearer and clearer that, there's just nothing appropriate about giving kids a brain disease. And so as the evidence accumulates, we're going to just keep trying to tell parents, look, even if you love football and you want them to play, if you want to maximize the benefits of the game, but minimize the risk of giving your kid a brain disease, you have to start later. This game was never meant for kids.
And it may be impossible for you to read the minds of legislators, school committee members, et cetera. What's your sense about why they're rejecting? I just spoke to a doctor about the anti-science bent in this country when it comes to COVID. What is this? When the science is so clear and it's their kids, I mean, what's up?
Well, because politicians are elected, and this is a very divisive issue. And frankly, if you take something away from people, the group you take something away from will be much more vocal in their fight. And so legislators have filed bills to ban youth tackle football at 412, and then a group coalesces to threaten to vote them out of office. And you don't get the same pats on the back from the families who already chosen not to do it.
You know, it seems to me, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, that Favre, as wonderful as the PSA is and his advocacy is still the outlier. You know, I'm obsessed with Tom Brady on this issue. We've talked about it in the past. Here's Brady on WEEI. I think it was in 2015.
There's risk reward to everything in life. So whatever your kid's into, I mean, obviously that's what I'll support.
And when he was on with Howard Stern just last year, said the same thing. He would absolutely encourage his kids to play. The mixed messaging from high-profile players is a problem, is it not?
It is because, you know, Peyton Manning has worked with football helmet companies to promote the game, and Tom Brady saying this. But on the other side, you have Brett Favre doing PSAs like this. You have Drew Brees starting flag football leagues and telling people he's not putting his own kids in tackle young. Yeah, so it's a little bit of a war of famous quarterbacks on the future of the game. You
know, for parents, get back to those parents for a moment who live vicariously through their children, and there are far too many parents like that in this society. Why don't you tell them what Tom Brady, Lawrence Taylor, and Jerry Rice, just as three examples, three of the greatest football players ever lived, have in common that might cause them to be less fearful that their kid won't grow up to be Brett Favre with that kind of talent?
Yeah, none of them played tackle football till high school. In fact, the top 5 consensus players ever never played till high school. Football is a sport that really is defined by how strong you are, how fast you are, how tough you are. And none of that has to do with starting tackling young. You can pick up the game overnight. I picked up the game overnight in high school. It can be done.
You know, I mentioned the introduction to you, something I've actually wanted to talk to you about months since June about this, and we just never made a connect. This race norming thing that was built into the billion-dollar settlement. I wrote down because I want to get it right. Tell me if I got this. If a black former player and a white former player received the exact same raw scores on a battery of tests designed to measure their current cognitive functioning, the black former player is presumed to have suffered less impairment and thus qualify for less compensation. Assuming I got that even close to right, this is one of the great outrages, and I know I'm hyperbolic, but not on this, of all time. Why has this not been, I know it's no longer, why has this not been a bigger story? It is an outrage.
No, it is hard to believe. And I think the only reason it's not a bigger story is it's complex science. But it's not complex to say that this is a racist policy that never should have existed. The idea of having different baseline norms by race has been around in neuropsychology for a long time because there are different baseline scores. And so the idea of giving, in some studies, and so the idea of giving different scores was meant to benefit the black population in the sense that they shouldn't be diagnosed with dementia if they don't really have it, right? Mm-hmm. So we know there's, tests vary by race. So the idea was this was meant to help people. It was meant to be up to the clinician, but it never, I don't think anyone conceived that the NFL would use this policy to actually punish people and take away money they deserved by saying, no, the color of your skin tells me that you have to be far more damaged in your brain to get compensation. That is where it all fell apart, and I'm so glad the players spoke up. I still can't believe they had to fight uphill so much to get this. But it's nice to see it end. I just hope it gets replaced with something, with an equal playing field and not some other policy that will continue to punish them just for the color of their skin.
Well, every parent in America should thank you, Dr. Cantu, Dr. McKee, and all of your colleagues. Thanks for your work, and good to see you, Chris. Thanks for your time.
Good. Thanks, Jim. Good to see you, too.